Hello BookTube, I'm Mike and this is Riffraff's Reading Renaissance. Recently when I made a video to ponder about whether you can have too many books or not, it ended up as a tag. So I thought today, while I was pondering again, I would dive straight into the concept of the tag. So today I want to introduce you to an original tag I've created called TBR Tough Choices Tag. It starts with the thought that there's so many books and so little time. Marcus Aurelius said, "You can leave life right now. Let that determine what you say, do, and think." Even the Bible says you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. Shakespeare's Macbeth taught us, "Out, out, brief candle, life's but a walking shadow," and Emily Dickinson said that it will never come again, and that is what makes life so sweet. So how to prioritize one's precious reading time? The smart aleck response is, well, start when you're younger than you are now, but that's not a great help. What if you could only read one more book? What would it be? All these thoughts and a big case of fear of missing out led me to create this tag. It's a series of straight shootouts. I've called it Gunfight at the BookTube Corral. It's straight shootouts between a succession of pairs of books. I've selected one for each letter of the alphabet, from A to Z, or if you live west of the Atlantic, from A to Z. And I need your help in choosing how to prioritize between. And there's only one rule. You can only choose one of each of the two books I put forward. That's the tag. If you haven't read the books, don't stress, just pass on. You can change the rules, you can introduce your own books. It's all about sharing opinions between similar books and deciding which one jumps the queue in your overstuffed TBR. And in case I forget to mention it later, you're all tagged if you've ever stressed out about your TBR and what to read next. So, without any further ado, let us dive straight in. A is for Ancient Assault, and the two books competing are Virgil's Aeneid and Ovid's Metamorphoses. I haven't read either. I know I've got to read both. I know Ovid's Metamorphoses is Steve Donohue's favorite book of all time, so that's a pretty high recommendation. But which one would you choose if you only had one book left to read? B is for Big Girl Battle. And here the shootout is between Vanity Fair with Becky Sharp and Middlemarch with Dorothea. I've read both. If push comes to shove, I think I might side with Becky. But it's a tough race and I know there's a lot of love out there for Dorothea. So tell me what you think. C is for Cormac Clash. Is it The Road or Blood Meridian? If you're only allowed to read one, which one will you choose? I know what Steve will say. Probably Metamorphoses. But you've got to follow the rules, Steve. You have to choose one from each selected battle. D is for Dostoyevsky's Duel. Is it Crime and Punishment or the Brothers Karamazov? I've read both. If I had a gun at my head, I think I might choose Crime and Punishment. I really loved the premise of the crime being committed right up front and then the subsequent consequences of that crime. It was a very interesting premise. The Brothers Karamazov is a worthy read, of course. I found it a teeny bit preachy at times, if I'm honest, and therefore my choice probably would go to Crime and Punishment. But what did you think? Or are these two reads still ahead of you, in which case have I swayed you? E is for Epic Engagement. The shootout is between John Steinbeck's East of Eden and Larry McMurtry's Lonesome Dove. For some reason, I have always equated these two books as two alternates in the same question of what to read next. I haven't read either, so tell me if I'm wrong to equate them, but if I'm not wrong, Tell me which one you would choose if you had just one book left to read between them. F is for Futuristic Firefight. Is it Fahrenheit 451 or Aldous Huxley's Brave New World? I haven't read either. I'm terribly ashamed to say because I think they're both worthy. But which one comes first? G is for Girl Power Grapple. Is it Little Women or Anne of Green Gables? I haven't read either. Tell me what the choice is. H is for Homeric Hostilities, the Iliad, and predictably, the Odyssey. Which one would you read if you had to choose just one? I is for Infinite Joust. Two very inscrutable books, James Joyce's Ulysses and David Foster Wallace's Infinite Jest. What brings them together, of course, is they're both inscrutable. They're both mountains to be climbed if you feel so inclined in your journey in BookTube or in literature. I haven't got around to either of them. I asked Shelley Swearingen about Infinite Jest, and she made a very interesting video response, which you should watch if you're having thoughts about reading Infinite Jest. I haven't got near to Ulysses because I've read The Dubliners and I haven't yet read Portraits of the Artist and the Young Man. That would be the next step in the journey. And I know there's very big split opinion. Joyce is either the be-all and end-all, or to some, just the end-all. Moving on, J is for Journeying Junket. Is it Tom Jones or Gulliver's Travels? Two massive novels, both well respected, about heroic journeying and discoveries. But which one to prioritize? It's a real struggle. It's a real struggle. There's just too many good books out there. K is for Kopy-kat Knockdown. And here we got two books that each are inspired by previous works of literature. So you've got Demon Copperhead on the one hand by Barbara Kingsolver, which takes its inspiration from David Copperfield. And then you've got Percival Everett's James, which takes its inspiration from The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. I haven't read either. I've got both. But which one would you read first? Let me know. Moving through the alphabet, L is next, and L is for Legal Last Stand. It's a shootout between To Kill a Mockingbird, which I know is a perennial favorite of many, and Dickens's Bleak House. I need to read more Dickens, and I've heard that Bleak House is in fact his greatest novel, not necessarily the most fun read, but on purely on the basis of quality of writing, that it is his greatest moment. Tell me if you agree, and more than that, if you had to choose and you're only allowed one, would it be Dickens's Bleak House or To Kill a Mockingbird? Under M, we see Middle Ages Melee, a straight shootout between Geoffrey Chaucer's Canterbury Tales and The Decameron by Boccaccio. They're both, in my mind, ancient and worthy reads, but neither of them are terribly easy to read in their original form, or even in their modern English original form, because I know both of them have been reworked and retold in many versions, much like Shakespeare. But what's your experience been? Do you have any advice to share there? Or are these monsters still ahead for you too? N is for non-fiction Nemesis, where there's two very worthy books competing, and they're both big chunkers. The one is The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, which is the go-to book for the history of what really happened in the Hitler story, unless you're one of those fans of Ian Kershaw's stunning biography of Hitler, simply called Hitler. So which one are you going to prioritize? Help me out here. O stands for Orwell's Offensive. It's a straight shootout, predictably, between Animal Farm and 1984. I've read both of these a long time ago. I would find it hard to choose between them. I might plump for 1984, but tell me what you think and why. Which of the two would you choose if you were only allowed one? P is for Paradise Punch-Up. It's the Divine Comedy or Paradise Lost. Which way are you going to go in the shootout? Q is for Quarrel of the Quests. These are two epic stories of two very different quests, but equally heroic. The one is Don Quixote, and the other is Moby-Dick. Now, this is an unfair fight for me because I've actually read Moby-Dick and I haven't read Don Quixote. And Don Quixote is very mixed in terms of the messaging you get. People say it's the first real novel, it's great, it's funny. People say read book 1, don't read book 2. So it's quite difficult to know exactly where to fit it on the priority list. But if you had to choose in a straight shootout between Don Quixote and Moby-Dick, what would you choose? R is for Rumble of the Reds. On the one hand, you've got The Red and the Black by Stendhal. On the other hand, you've got a perennial classic, The Red Badge of Courage. Which is it going to be? Help a guy out. S stands for Salmon's Showdown, a shootout between Salman Rushdie's classics The Midnight's Children and The Satanic Verses. I've heard a lot about Midnight's Children and the fact that it is, for most people, his best novel. Of course, Satanic Verses is the most hyped novel because of all the dramatic news that ran around it. But what would your choice be? Tell me if you know. If you have a strong opinion, or if you've read the books and you know the answer, let me know. T is for Tolstoy's Throwdown. Here it's obviously between Anna Karenina and War and Peace. And I actually have a strong opinion here because I've read both. If I had to read only one, to howls of disagreement, I'm sure, I would read Anna Karenina. But the good news is in real life, you don't only have to read one, you can read both. And the question is which to come first. And that's where I really would share advice. I would strongly urge people to read Anna Karenina first because it's an easier read and it will open up to you the world of Tolstoy, which most of us don't know before we tackle one of these two monsters. But you will discover, as I discovered, A, that Tolstoy is an easy read. It's just long, but the actual act of reading it is easy. It's a little bit like getting into a new soap opera, where it goes on and on and on forever, but is easily digested and thoroughly enjoyable, and in fact, a page-turner. That discovery, which I had from Anna Karenina, gave me the courage to tackle War and Peace, and I found a similar situation there, a very readable story, just a heck of a lot of it, but it keeps you engrossed all the way through. So, that's my advice to anyone who's still to tackle those two books. U stands for Unseen Upheaval, and here these are books which perhaps haven't had the representation that they should have. The first is Beloved by Toni Morrison, and its competition is The Wide Sargasso Sea. Now, I haven't read either. I know I've got to read both, but in the rules of this game, you're only allowed to choose one, so tell me which one it should be, based on what you've read. V is for Virginia's Volley. The two competing Virginia Woolf books here are To the Lighthouse and Orlando, because those are the ones I have not read. I've read Mrs. Dalloway, which obviously a lot of people would put first, but I need your guidance in the choice between To the Lighthouse and Orlando. They're very different books, I understand. To the Lighthouse looks back at some of her earlier life, whereas Orlando is a little bit more into the realm of historical fantasy or alternative history or something along those lines. I know there's gender experimentation in Orlando, but let me know which one you think is the choice if you've got to make a tough choice. W stands for Wharton's Warfare. Now, oddly enough, I've read Ethan Frome by Edith Wharton, but I haven't read The House of Mirth and I haven't read The Age of Innocence. So there's a tough choice here. Which one comes first? Guide me. X is for, predictably, X-rated X-posure. Books that not everybody thinks are prim and proper. And the shootout here is a direct shootout between Lolita and Lady Chatterley's Lover. Both books that on the one hand are argued to be brilliant pieces of literature and on the other hand caused quite a lot of scandal when they came out and still to this day have some people tutting into their sleeves. I've read both. I think they're both great books. If I had to choose one, it would be Lolita, because I do think Nabokov is a master. I have a lot of Nabokov still to read, but I think he is a little bit of a genius, the way he plays with language and presents us with situations that make us think hard and not necessarily very comfortably. Let me know what you think. Y is for young adult yard fight. Now, I don't do a lot of young adult reading, but I have got 2 books, and in fact I've read one of them and not read the other. And the one I've read is My Dark Vanessa, and the one I have not read is My Absolute Darling. And they both deal with the uncomfortable situation of relationships with great age differences and power balance indifferences, and they bump up against the whole Me Too movement. But My Dark Vanessa is a very nuanced book written from the perspective of Vanessa, who some might call the victim, although she does not see herself in that light. And therein lies the interesting nuance of the book itself. My Absolute Darling is a slightly different book, but also a similar premise, where there is one of these situations with an extreme imbalance of power. I haven't read it, so I won't argue further about its merits. But if you've read either of them, let me know what you think. Certainly an interesting read and a very sensitive and difficult subject. And finally, Z is for Zombie Zapper. And here it's a shootout between 2 perennial classics, Dracula and Frankenstein. And of course, one must read both. But if you only had one more book to read before you had to shuffle off this mortal coil, and those were the 2 choices, Dracula or Frankenstein, which side would you go with? Now, I've read Frankenstein. I have not yet read Dracula. It's in the pile, of course. That's why it's here. Frankenstein is a fantastic read. Mary Shelley is a phenomenon. And I think the most important reason I would say to people to read Frankenstein is that the reputation that Frankenstein has out there, courtesy of Hollywood and a whole lot of other interpretations, is so wrong that you really need to read the original to understand. And I suspect the same is probably true of Dracula. But if you've read them, let me know what you think. I had a couple of honourable mentions, but I ran out of alphabet. So I'd like to do a shootout between what I'd call historical havoc, between, on the one hand, The Diary of a Young Girl and Frank's critically important diary of her experience during the Second World War in Holland, and of course Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, which charts his experience as a prisoner within a Nazi concentration camp. I was tempted to add Fitzgerald's Fist Fight, where I would shoot out between The Great Gatsby and Tender is the Night. I've read both. I know The Great Gatsby is always held up as the quintessential American novel, but if push came to shove and I had only one choice, Tender is the Night does it for me. I like it better than The Great Gatsby. But tell me what you think. And then finally, if I had one more honourable mention to sneak in, it would be the swashbuckling sword fight, and I would shoot out between The Count of Monte Cristo and Alexander Dumas' other great classic, The Three Musketeers. And I guess it depends on what you like. I've read both. The Three Musketeers is a swashbuckling adventure story with, crash, bang, wallop all the way. The Count of Monte Cristo is a more reasoned and interesting tale of a man driven by revenge. But it's an exciting story. It's no less exciting than The Three Musketeers, just because it's focused on one rather than three. Brilliant reads, both. If push comes to shove, I think The Count of Monte Cristo would get my choice. So that's the alphabet of choices. Remember the rules, guys. They're all good books, I think, but you're only allowed to choose one in each showdown. So tell me what you think. And if you feel moved, please make a video. It would be fun to see it in more detail. If you don't feel like making a video, talk to me in the comments and tell me. You don't have to answer all of the A to Z's. You can leave it out. But where you have a strong opinion, let me know which of the 2 books I've chosen for these various showdowns is, in your opinion, the one who wins. So, thank you very much. This was just a fun tag I thought I would do to try and relieve the stress of the TBR. as we go towards the end of the year and start thinking about what to read next year, I really need your help. Let me know what you think, and in any event, I hope you've enjoyed this little interlude. If you have, please do the usual like and subscribe and ring the bell so that you get my videos as soon as they're released. That would be very kind. And in any event, I hope you've enjoyed this little ramble together, and I'll hope to see you next time. Bye-bye now, BookTube.